Hello friends, it's me again, and it's time for another installment of this story. Part 3, The Goblin Queen Falls in Love, by Reddit user BeyondSurface69. Let's just get right into this, because I have no idea what's going to happen. Hello friends, I'm back to continue the tale of my time with the Goblin Queen. I want to start off by saying that I could never hate you, RedX. Your videos have brought me too much joy for me to be petty about you being so truthful. I also agree with that. I haven't seen the videos specifically, but I also love you, RedX. You're my friend. Call me. At the time of this tale, I was known as somewhat of a womanizer, and I flirted with practically anyone just to do it. I'm reading these one after the other, and I know that I kind of hinted at some of that stuff, but I'm glad that you're, being open and honest about this. I figured this was a while back, and I figured that a lot of changes have taken place. Rebellion was my go-to response for practically everything, and that led to a weird obsession with breaking societal norms, and like a lot of teenagers, I massively missed the actual point of such a concept. I did a lot of things for no real reason, except to be able to say I did it. I was all about shock value, and I believe my biggest flaw at the time, and even still sometimes say, was the fact that I hated confrontation to the point that it made it hard just for me to say no. As I've said in some videos in the past, I don't even know if you're listening to this, but as I've said in some videos in the past, saying no is a difficult thing that we all have to learn. You would think it's easy, it's just a word, but we all want to make people happy. You gotta take care of yourself sometimes too. If something really makes you that uncomfortable, say no. And if the other person gets mad and they don't even want to listen to you, they weren't worth hanging out with in the first place. I developed quite a reputation that actually led most people to thinking I was just some asshole kid. But I'm happy to be able to tell you guys I have grown so much in the last 10 years since all of this took place. I'm actually really happy to hear that. That's amazing, dude. And I will say that I am thankful for all the insane, wild stories I now have, because one could argue I was just a horny moron. Content warning for all the mild mention of horrible things. I can't say some of these words on YouTube. The cast. OP, your now technically homeless narrator. My fear of being alone is what pushed me to continue putting up with the Goblin Queen. But I was living and learning, even if I didn't want to be. Added bonus fact, I absolutely despise Ayn Rand and her works. I can agree with you on that. There's something we have in common. I'm starting to like you more and more. The Goblin Queen, my girlfriend at the time. After the incident with McFlurry in the first part, she had become more controlling. She had obviously faked 2 mixed carriages and was pretending to be the children by using a texting app. She always claimed to be bisexual, and because of that, she insisted that I help her find a girlfriend. Oh boy. McFlurry, my best friend to this day, and I would start accepting that I had feelings for her. She would catch the attention of Army Bro's little brother, and such now has a nice guy story of her own. Oh wow. Her and I would really become best friends in this part, and she would forever give my thanks and respect for being the first person to call me out on my bullshit. Denal, Army Bro's little brother, much like Army Bro, he thinks of me as an adopted sibling. Felt like I was saying brother and bro too much. He wore a D4 necklace despite not playing any tabletop games, and his room was a real neckbeard nest. It was littered with snack wrappers, water bottles, and clothes thrown all over the place. I guess one could argue that he was a neckbeard himself, but he really struck me as more of a nice guy. Madre, Army Bro and Denal's mother. She was and is an absolute gem. She's the one that took me in after I left my grandmother's, and like her kids, she thought of me as one of her own. She was more of a mother than my own. Denal would often give her a hard time, choosing to argue with her when she asked him to do stuff, and the only way his room ever got cleaned was if she did it. Birth giver, my mom, who I'd cut off a year prior. It was because of her that I received the check for $10,000 due to her losing one of her legs. Oh my god. I would casually attempt to make amends with her, and she did really seem like she was a better person. I had walked down the road away from my grandmother's for about 20 minutes before the gravity of my situation set in. I'd basically run away, but I hadn't thought farther than just the running. It was at this moment I thought of Army Bro and how I wished I could call him to pick me up. It was with the thought of him that I remembered the first letter he sent me once he got settled at basic. Our only form of communication was writing because apparently you can't have your phone during basic training for the Army. In the letter, he said that while he was gone, if I ever needed something, that I shouldn't be afraid to ask Madre. I was crying at this point, thinking about how much I was wishing he could help me now, but I managed to pull out my phone and call Madre. She was excited when she heard it was me, and by the end of our conversation, she was livid with the actions of my father and grandmother. "Honey, I'll be right there." I still remember hearing her say that clear as day. I started to feel less worried and less afraid. Within 30 minutes, she had arrived, and I threw my stuff in the back of her car and hopped in the front. During the ride to her place, I texted the Goblin Queen and told her what happened. She was surprisingly supportive. In fact, it was one of the few times she was. I honestly thought she would berate me for running away because she had a habit of making me feel like I was just an inconvenience to her. I also broke the Goblin Queen's golden rule of not talking to McFlurry. I also filled her in on what happened, and she showed a type of caring that I'd never received before. Eventually, we would arrive at Madre's place, a place that I had been to hundreds of times, but this time it felt different. I took my stuff inside and went upstairs. Army Bro's room had 2 beds in it for some reason, and I took the one that I knew he didn't sleep in. I just gotten settled when the door to the room opposite me opened. "So you're living with us because your dad hit you, huh?" That wasn't a weird statement to me because I knew this is just how Denal was. Yeah, I guess so. "For real, I'm happy to have you. I'm glad you're okay. Stop looking like an emo fuck and come in here and watch Netflix." I obliged, grabbed my phone and charger. He had already headed back to his computer chair. He was now shirtless and chugging a 2-liter Dr. Pepper. Wow. In typing all that, I realized he does definitely hit some neckbeard points. I mean, I was going to say something, but yeah. Something I hadn't really thought about until just now. He wasn't a large guy by any means. He had almost 0 facial hair. He did love to wear suits all the time. He would wake up each morning, pick out a suit, pack his school stuff in a briefcase. He was also a huge brony to the point that he used Facebook add-on Ponyhoof, which ponified literally everything. Oh my god, I remember that from back in the day. And with that, I will confess that I was also a brony and started using Ponyhoof because of Denal. It was a neat extension, I remember it. I will also say that I no longer watch MLP, and I actually stopped watching after the episode where Fluttershy becomes a vampire or something like that. The story and the humor was on point, and I refused to be shamed for liking quality programming. It's fine, dude. As Denal sat there, switching his attention from his computer to his TV, I was trying to maneuver myself through the mountain of soda bottles and other miscellaneous trash. Dude, why is there so much garbage? It was never like this when Army Bro was here. "Yeah, well, he isn't here now. This is my room, so I'll clean it whenever I want." I rolled my eyes as he tossed me the remote, and I leapt onto the bed. I chose to watch King of the Hill, and would actually go through the series multiple times with Denal during my stay there. We were a few episodes in when Denal would ask me a question that, at the time, inflated my ego, but now makes me cringe. "You're like super good with girls, right?" "I guess. Why?" "Well, then give me some tips." "Like what?" "You know, like tell me how you ended up hooking up with as many as you have." I was confused. I mean, my body count wasn't that high at all. "I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I haven't really been with that many girls." He turned to face me in his computer chair, swinging it around like an Austin Powers villain. Is that where we go to now? You damn kids. "I heard you whine on that couch downstairs. You asked Army Bro if he thought you were a slut." He had me there. That actually did happen, and I began to think maybe I was a little excessive when it came to women. "I don't need your help now, but if I find someone, like, you know, just help me with what to say and stuff." I agreed, but was still unsure of exactly what he meant. I was messaging the Goblin Queen the entire time. It was just a bunch of the usual Wonderland stuff. I was beginning to get tired of it, and I started answering slower. Something that she would get mad at and ask me what I was doing that was more important than talking to her. That's a red flag. I casually ignored that and just said that I was chilling with Denal. She got mad at me when she wanted to call, and I said I didn't have service there. Plus, I didn't feel comfortable using Madre's house phone like that. She ignored me the rest of the night, and it was the first time I didn't send her a good night text. The next morning, she was angry about me not even messaging her good night, even though I knew that she wouldn't answer. This would evolve into an argument that she would not drop. She would say that I ignored her and neglected her, but I defended my actions by saying I just knew there was no point in wasting my time sending a message that was just going to be ignored. I'm not exaggerating when I say she kept this going for a few days. I even asked Madre if it was okay for me to call the Goblin Queen and talk to her for about an hour. To which she told me that I didn't even have to ask, but I only stayed on the line for about 20 minutes because despite my conversation attempt, the Goblin Queen stayed mostly quiet and would deliver a grunt sound that apparently just meant okay. I was getting increasingly annoyed by her actions, but every time I felt like I was ready to call it off, my fear of being alone would convince me not to. It was the October of that year, and I'd been living at Madre's for about a month. In that time, I managed to help her clean up the place. I made sure we always had clean dishes, I would start the fire in the wood stove, and have the home warm, and Madre absolutely was thrilled with what I did to help maintain the place. I was even starting to look for jobs so I could toss her some cash for the bills. My birthday was also coming up, and I was thinking about celebrating. One day, after a long day of wood cutting and cleaning, the Goblin Queen messaged me. Hey, I have a question. What's up? You know how I said I'm bisexual? Yeah? Well, I want a girlfriend. So you're breaking up with me? No, I still want to keep you, but I just want to have a girlfriend too. Now, I know polygamy is a thing, and it's perfectly okay if that's who you are, but I unfortunately am not. That's what I was worried about. That's what I was worried as soon as this started, where this was going to go. I guess I'm a bit of a romantic, and at the risk of sounding pretentious, I've always viewed love and soulmates, like all of the poems and songs led me to believe. I thought it was something almost sacred, and that when you found your other half, it would be almost surreal. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. Like, how would that even work? It'd be easy. You come over one weekend, she'll come over the next. I didn't think it was as simple as she was making it out. It made me feel like I was just a second choice or consolation prize. It was because of this that I realized that most of the girls I had went after or talked to probably felt the same way because of me. And that felt shitty. Wow, that is some stark realization, dude. I'm really not okay with this. Look, it's what I need, so if you want to be with me, then you need to accept that. I can already hear Red X cringing at what I'm about to type. But I know, I was a passive little bitch. I did not want the headache of confrontation, of saying no and sticking to it. And that all along, with that fear of being alone or abandoned by someone I actually cared about, was enough to make me submit. I don't really know what Red X would say in this situation, but I can absolutely say that I understand that fear. When you're young, the fear of losing a relationship is like tantamount to death. So you really would do pretty much anything. And you would allow really toxic people to manipulate you because you're just wanting someone to care about you. And considering all the stuff that you were going through at the time, you know, I can totally understand that. I'm glad that you're doing better now, though. Like, seriously, it's really fucked up that she would kind of bring this up right then, but yeah. That hurts, dude. Sorry about that. Okay, I guess we can try. Good. Now, there's a girl in my English class. She's really pretty, but I can't stop staring at her. She proceeded to tell me about this girl who, in reality, was the polar opposite of the Goblin Queen. She played sports, made good grades, hung out with the jock and preppy types, and to top it off, she was a Christian, and one of her friends hated homosexuals. Classy. I just didn't see this working out in any way, but the Goblin Queen insisted it was love. She constantly asked me what she should do, to which my response was always the same. Talk to her. The Goblin Queen had never said a single word to her, and here she was listing off things about her and swooning over her. Denal was confused when I told him, but his concern was more of a, why'd you say no, 'cause threesomes? Oh my god. I knew that really wasn't the reality of it. The letters in Penthouse are nothing but lies. Eventually, the Goblin Queen would move on to what seemed like a different girl each week, including McFlurry at one point, but I was still forbidden to speak to her. After a few weeks, the Goblin Queen stopped mentioning the subject altogether. Denal had found someone that he liked during this time, and it just so happened to be McFlurry. I tried to casually guide him away from her by saying things, I know her, dude, she won't go for you. But he stayed in pursuit. One night, he asked me to write a letter to her for him. Oh, that's creepy. Dude, just write the letter and I'll copy it in my handwriting. I did it, but only because he would not stop begging. I finished the letter in almost an hour, and it did sound pretty legit. He did, in fact, recopy it and then give it to her. That night, she messaged me and asked about the letter. Hey, Denal gave me this weird love note, but I have to ask, did you write this? Oh shit, how'd you know? You're the only person I know that talks like this, and it didn't sound anything like the other notes he wrote me. I thought it was pretty dope that she could just pick out my style like that. She was talking to Denal, not in the way he wanted to. McFlurry would later tell me that he seemed to just view her like an object, and that she even felt guilted into sending him nudes. Oh my god, that is 1000% not okay. My birthday came October 18th, and I spent it with Birthgiver. It had been so long since I had seen my mother that I found myself actually excited. She went with me to the tattoo shop. I got an arguably regrettable tattoo. I got the lyrics from Fall Out Boy's Sophomore Slump or Comeback of the Year across my collarbone, which would lead to some cringy selfies in my Keep Calm and Brony On hoodie. I think I have one of these selfies still saved, and I'll find it and post it to the visual. Just be warned, it's cringe. Oh my god, dude. Time is not fair, I totally understand. On the day after my birthday, Denal informed me that he had a date with McFlurry. I wasn't thrilled about that, but I tried to be supportive. The date was a haunted house attraction called Hacker House, no doubt because he knew McFlurry was into that sort of thing. Madre knew that McFlurry and I were friends, and she insisted that I go along, and even gave me some cash for the haunted house. My tattoo was still sore when it was time to go, so I wore only my hoodie and kept it zipped up just below the tattoo so the zipper wouldn't rub up against it. We headed out, picked up McFlurry, and before we were there, Denal ran ahead so he could get McFlurry and his tickets. I haven't seen you in like forever, dude. I missed you. Yeah, I missed you too. You still look like you're trying to dress like me. Shut up, I dress better than you. Whatever, did you see my tattoo? Yeah, Fall Out Boy, you fucking loser. I like her. We left, and this was quickly becoming one of the most fun nights of my life. The Goblin Queen was sending message after message. From her own number, just non-stop actions involving her Wonderland, and from the text app, she was basically having a conversation with herself between the two kids. I felt really unsettled as I was scrolling through these messages. I had never felt that before, but I didn't even know what to think about her anymore. I just turned my phone off. The line outside Hacker House was incredibly long. During the almost 45-minute wait, Denal, McFlurry, and I were actually having a good time, just talking, joking. Denal made a few attempts at holding her hand, but she just kind of pulled away or ignored it. I thought this was pretty funny and it made me happy for some reason. Eventually it was our turn to go in. Denal led the way, McFlurry went second, and she insisted that I stay close behind to protect her from any of the actors that may have snuck up on her. I was pretty worried about getting jump scared, so I was trying to be extra cautious. Every so often, McFlurry would stop walking and let me run into her. I didn't know if it was intentional or just an accident, but it happened a few times. Nearing the end, I almost shit myself. There was a room that first looked like a safe way out, and I was beginning to think that it wasn't that bad, when behind me I hear a familiar sound of a revving chainsaw. I screamed and looked behind me to see. I was almost face to face with a makeshift Leatherface. Denal and McFlurry had run ahead, leaving me at the mercy of this horror cosplayer. I turned and ran. The fake blade of the chainsaw actually touched my ankles a few times. If this were the real event, I think I would have been a goner. My heart still pounding when I got out of the house. I pulled my phone and turned it on. Denal and McFlurry were waiting and laughing at me. That wasn't so bad. Dude, you screamed. I was startled. It was alarming. Nah, you're just kind of a bitch, dude. I'm gonna hit that portable shitter and be back, babe. The babe was directed at McFlurry, who made a face at the phrase, portable shitter. I mean, to be fair, that's what I'm gonna start calling them now. I'm being called babe. Feel that? My phone was blowing up, message after message from the Goblin Queen and her ghost children. I was dreading checking them. McFlurry was shivering a step closer to say that she was freezing. I put my phone away and glanced at the portable shitter, and then looked at McFlurry. We made eye contact, and then it happened. We both went in for a kiss, but she stopped halfway through. Dude, what about the Goblin Queen? I don't want to think about her. What about Denal? Honestly, didn't comfort Denal. I was going to cancel until you said you were going. So I went back in to kiss her. Really? She returned the kiss, and it was the first kiss that made me feel something. I couldn't explain it, but it absolutely felt like the right thing to do. Denal came out a few seconds later, and it was obvious what had happened. McFlurry and I looked at each other one last time before heading to the car. McFlurry's family were meeting us at a local grocery store. On the ride there, I just kept quiet and listened to music. I started responding to the Goblin Queen and wasn't really happy about the whole Wonderland stuff going on. We reached the grocery store, and Denal said that he had to use the restroom again. Madre was spending time with her boyfriend, so she told us that we could all go in for a second. Denal sprinted to the restrooms, leaving McFlurry and I alone together, but I would find that McFlurry was upset. To this day, neither of us remember what the argument was about, but I can recite the next part almost moment by moment. We were fighting and arguing, and she stormed off. And I did the opposite way. I know this is going to sound like a movie, but I think that's why we both remember it so well. The whole thing doesn't even seem real, and we were the ones that did it. I got a few steps away into storming off, and I stopped and turned around. McFlurry stopped a bit later. I always assume because she heard me stop or something, because the whole thing does kind of seem surreal. We met eyes and ran to each other. She jumped into my arms, hurting my fresh tat in the process, and we started making out. Both of us described it as time seeming to stop as if it was just her and I. But we both felt something. This event would lead to others that would change my life. Spoiler alert, McFlurry and I would have a baby 6 years after this. Well, alright. Eventually, Denal rejoined us, and by then McFlurry's family had arrived and we parted ways. Denal spent the entire ride home bragging about how much fun he had on his date, and I retreated to listening to music. I got home to find a hateful message from the Goblin Queen telling me I was a terrible father for not responding to my children, and McFlurry had asked me what the hell happened between us, but I only responded to her by saying something along the lines of, "I'm not sure, but I didn't hate it." November came, and McFlurry and I hadn't spoken that much since the kiss. She messaged me one day saying that she had a boyfriend, and when I got upset and angry is when it happened. She tore into me in a way that not even my dad's fist could. Look, you didn't tell the Goblin Queen what happened. You didn't break up with her, and I shouldn't have to wait just because you can't make up your fucking mind. I want to be happy. You haven't even talked about what happened or why it happened. I didn't take this well, and I'm ashamed of what I did next. I basically went full nice guy and started shit-talking her boyfriend. No. You will not sit there and talk shit about someone you do not even know, just to make yourself feel better. You can't be mad at anyone but yourself. You didn't say anything, you didn't talk to me, I'm not letting you take your bullshit out on someone who doesn't even know you. You're just acting like a bitch, and I will not be one of those girls that you fucked up. Don't even respond to me. I'll text you when I feel like it. I listened to her. I was angry at first. I was so mad at her for being honest. I was so mad that I also thought about so much that I realized she was absolutely right. My unhappiness was my fault. My problems weren't really problems, and I only had them because I chose to ignore things instead of actually confronting them. Halloween came, and the Goblin Queen wanted to go trick-or-treating. I wasn't up for dressing up, but I said I'd go with her. Madre had something with her work come up, and thus she couldn't take me. I made the absolutely awful choice to walk from where I was to the Goblin Queen. It was a 30-minute drive, so I only thought it would take like 2 hours to walk. I was so fucking wrong. I set out at 7 a.m. and finally arrived at her place after 5. Oh my god. I hated myself the entire walk. I even debated about turning around, but alas, I persevered. I thought more about what McFlurry had said, and I had a few revelations while walking. But it was mostly just me cursing myself because I couldn't say no to the Goblin Queen. If I had just said no, I wouldn't have the blisters on my feet. The autumn foliage offered me a little peace, and would have been a beautiful sight if I had managed to see it under different circumstances. When I arrived at the Goblin Queen, she was angry with me because she had told me to try to be there around 4:30. She had no regard to the fact that I just walked an insane distance just to be with her. You can guess what happened next. I received the silent treatment, and the high charisma Fallout character that I thought I was turned out to be just an NPC in the Goblin Queen's life. I know this wasn't as wild as the last two parts, but the events in this play a huge role in about what's to come. I was about to be humiliated on Christmas, where the Goblin Queen would show me my actual worth to her. My grandmother hadn't even tried to contact me since I left, and I was starting to feel completely alone. I thought I lost McFlurry, who had stopped talking to me altogether, and I feel like I was just a toy to the Goblin Queen, and I was beginning to think it was disgusting that she pretended to be children that didn't exist. My fear of abandonment in my eyes had come true. McFlurry called me out and just ghosted me, and I was left in the god-awful situation I was putting myself in. Thank you guys for reading, and thank you to RedX for reading Part 1. I'll return for Part 4 soon. Okay, I can safely say, whatever I thought was going to happen in the first part is definitely, changed. My entire opinions have changed. I thought this was, a bunch of very kind of selfish shit going on between a little bit of everybody, but it looks like, first off, my opinion on McFlurry was about 1,000% wrong. No, she just straight up called you out, dude. Completely and honestly did, and that's honestly kind of wild. And from an obvious perspective, very good. This reflection was probably one of the best moments you could have had. Everybody has, those moments when you're a kid where you think you have it all figured out, and, you think everything about whatever you're doing is just, you got this, like, oh, I already figured it out, I know everything. But you don't. You're constantly learning. And this was kind of your learning moment. This realization that, like, abandonment and a fear of abandonment is a normal thing. I mean, it happens to a lot of people. Shit, that's the reason why we have such a name for it. But eventually you reach a point where you realize that it's not okay, things that are happening. It's not okay that you have to put up with this stuff. And it's not okay that someone is basically using you. Yeah, OP may have, done some pretty scummy things in the past, but no one is above forgiveness when it comes to, well, pretty much anything. I say pretty much because there are certain people, and we know who they are. Names rhyme with Pharaoh, if you know what I'm saying. That doesn't mean that OP can't learn and become a better person. And from the sound of things, that's exactly what happened. I'm honestly very interested in seeing where this goes. I thought, when I first started this, there's definitely a percentage of you who are here and enjoy these videos and are in my Discord and stuff that are a lot younger than the audience that I expected I'd attract, because, I mean, let's face it, I'm like an old weird dude on the internet. So I don't really have a huge amount to connect with this. I understand, like, I remember the Brony thing. I was never into Fall Out Boy, and some of these references I don't get, but I am fascinated by this story, and it's kind of like looking into a window of someone else's life and seeing what, like, being a teenager at that time actually meant. And, like, what it was. Because, you have 1,000,001 mirrors to look into, or not really mirrors, more like windows. I don't know why I said mirrors. For, like, different perspectives on what, high school at that time is perceived to be. But, like you guys know, when I talk about my own time being that young, I was always like a weird punk. I was just like this outcast, this, weirdo who hung out with a bunch of beards because I didn't have any friends, but I was always like this punk rocker. So I was never, in this position. I was too old by the time this kind of stuff came around. By the time the whole emo thing was like a thing, I would have been in my, like, early 20s. So wasn't really around for all that. I knew of it, but I was kind of out of all that. So seeing this, and then seeing, like, these very relatable situations, these, like, the fear of abandonment, toxic, relationships, bad things like that. And, bad relationships aren't always immediate. They're, they slowly grow, they slowly become a thing. And I think that's one of the things that's most fascinating about this, is I relate to that. I can understand that. I've had some bad relationships myself, and they don't start that way. They always start good, but the bad things grow. And I can understand where OP is coming from with a lot of this stuff. The Goblin Queen in the beginning was fine. Weird, a little quirky, but, okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's weird. Honestly, it's the people who fit in entirely too much who make me, uncomfortable. They know something. I just know it. But that's totally fine to be a little strange. It's when the level of how strange these things are starts growing and growing, and you realize that it's not quirky and it's not strange, that it's just manipulation and control, that, yeah, it's pretty fucking bad. And it sounds like this was the point where, OP started to turn the corner. At every toxic relationship, you have that moment where you realize that things are fucked up. You realize that it's not good for you, and you realize that you shouldn't be there anymore. And granted, this doesn't mean that OP is immediately breaking up with the Goblin Queen, but it's the first step. It's that step when you realize that things just aren't the way that you expected them to be, and that all the little compromises to put up with certain little things have now compiled into this thing where you're not even being yourself anymore. You're existing for someone else. You're not even enjoying your own time. So this has been honestly fascinating, and I am excited for part 4. As of reading this, it's not out yet, but I will definitely try to keep my eye out and see when it does come out. And if it does, and somebody sees it, please link it to me. I have a subreddit, because this is the outro. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I have a Ko-Fi and I have a subreddit, but that wasn't what I was going to say. I have a Ko-Fi and a merch store. I'm good at this. Those keep the lights on in here. And the subreddit is where you can send your story or just any kind of thing that you think is fascinating and would like me to look at. I'll check it. There's a live stream every Saturday, and I have a Discord. All that stuff's in the description drop-down thingy. Do they still call it a description? I don't know, man. I just work here. Either way, it's down there. It's below the video, and every video, so check it out. I love you all so very, very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody.